Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Defuse. I'm Alan IHOLDSHIFT on a Frio.
And I'm Austin Visions Neil.
And this is, of course, the Defuse. We've got, well, not a lot to talk about, it kind of feels like, because let's be honest, the games did not last for very long in these first couple of days, Austin. I don't know if you can see it there. We're going to shoot for under 45 minutes today on the show. It's supposed to be 30 minutes long, but we're going to shoot for under 45. We're giving ourselves a bit of a grace period here because, let's be honest, we talk a lot, Austin.
We do like to talk a lot, Alan. That's what we do. It's always good to get ourselves in towards the mix here. But yeah, I mean, there is, interesting enough, not a lot to talk about. And as we start getting in towards some of the talking, well, our first match, LA coming through against Minnesota Rocker. And this was our first look at the Thieves besides the kickoff, or as far as what we got to see, and getting yourselves in towards the nitty gritty. I thought that Rocker was going to come out a little bit stronger in towards a lot of these matchups. I think a lot of people did as well, with a lot of the talk around, what will Major Maniac and Priestner be able to bring towards the other two members, because these guys finished second last year in COD champs, and there was a great build up throughout that entire season of a lot of successes. So we thought, I think, at least me in particular, thought they were going to hit a little bit harder, but man, it was just incredible from LA for as far as what they did. The Thieves came to play. Looks like they've been putting in the work, and they've been improving drastically.
Look, I'll say this much. I was a stiff doubter of what this LA Thieves team was going to do as recently as Wednesday when we were last talking about this squad. Yeah. But they came out and they actually played some pretty damn good COD through and through for all four of them. Now, my only thing about it is I don't really know if I should be damned as a doubter, or was Minnesota just completely unprepared? Because one of the things that I say a lot about this Minnesota team as far as why we think they're either going to be really good or really bad is the fact that this is a very veteran roster. So the fact that they came out and looked really unprepared was a big surprise for me overall. I mean, there's a 3-1 scoreline, and to be fair, the back two maps, Minnesota looked like they barely even loaded into the lobby.
That was a scary thing, right? We come through, well, what was the 250, 194, map number one. We're like, oh, it was a good competitive map on Moscow. We thought maybe a couple of rotations could be one from Rocker. Yeah, we're like, damn, we got ourselves a good best of 5. And then we just went in towards map number 2. Looks good. And then it was just LA just kind of coming alive on towards that Miami. And then as we got throughout the rest of the series, I mean, Control, Garrison, 3-1, like things were looking great. And also there was a really nice spawn trap that came through there from LA as well. So they're already showing us, what they're capable of doing as they get more and more time invested in towards the game. So yeah, I underestimated this roster. I think they came through and gave us a lot of strong takeaways for as far as what they might be able to do with the rest of their matches as well.
The whole thing about it is it's nothing like what we saw during the kickoff. Literally nothing. We saw absolutely nothing like this from LA Thieves overall. And a lot of it was because of TJ. I mean, look, he had a really, really slow start, like a really slow start to that first map. But attach was a problem, and they eventually dealt with it, and that was one of the reasons why on that Garrison they were able to come back and win 250 to 194. But then after that, LAT, I thought for a second was going to just completely be, untouched. I mean, TJ played really, really well, but Kenny played really well as well. I mean, lots of wells in that. I mean, there's lots of well happening. But my whole thing is TJ, you talked about it a lot. He looked like he was back to form when it came to what we kind of came to know from him when he was playing in World War II, the last 4v4 game that we had.
Yeah, like, listen, last year when we're looking at this OpTic roster, right? Like, this is 3 of them at the very least coming in towards this Thieves roster. And there was nothing about that roster that I think everyone was like, oh, these guys are going to be dominating. They're going to be really, really good. It's because a lot of these players that have been known to pop off in towards the past weren't bringing it during Modern Warfare. So I think the assumption going in towards this game was we would maybe get the same, but that is not the case. TJ, for whatever reason, going back to when we did see him in 4v4 during World War II, he was an absolute menace on the map. He was doing TJ things. That's how he really got his brand and his name out there, was he was taking over with Rise Nation, a squad that was extremely underrated, and he made a lot of strong kind of just commitments towards what he was able to do on the map. And that is a massive factor. So we got TJ back in form, at least for this matchup. And now you can look towards something for as far as this Thieves roster. Slasher, very, very solid AR. I thought Kenny played an excellent flex as well. But when TJ is able to play this roaming submachine gun role that has to be filled for every single team, now you can look towards the Thieves and I think actually say, all right, they can maybe get themselves towards what could be a top 4, maybe even battle out against some of those tougher teams and opponents as well.
The whole thing about it is we talked largely about how that roaming SMG is going to play a massive role early in this game. And would TJ or Temp be able to hang on to that specific role? Because Attach came out on Garrison and was putting LA Thieves in the ground early. And both Temp and TJ had really slow starts because of it. Eventually they picked things up, and then that Moscow, I mean, 250 to 60. I mean, Minnesota barely looked like they even knew how to play with the controller on that map. I mean, let's be honest, they looked awful. In overall, I will sit there and say that, do I expect Minnesota to play this poorly again this week? I mean, they're playing Dallas, so yeah, but through the rest of their group, I don't know. The problem is they looked completely unprepared. So I don't even know if it was necessarily LA Thieves looked that good or Minnesota just looked that bad. I would lean towards Minnesota played that poorly.
That's what I kind of want to lean to as well, because I was kind of talking about accuracy, underrated AR. Thought he still held his own throughout a lot of those respawns, except for maybe the last one. And Attach looked great. It just felt like they were unable to make those changes and adapt. So things not looking maybe too good for Rocker off the start, but I still have confidence in this roster to be able to bounce back. But at the very least, I mean, Thieves, they're just too good for us right now. I mean, they just kind of really blow everyone's expectations out of the water just because they get 0-3. But maybe that was all planned down. Maybe it was the 0-3. Teams are going to underestimate us. We're going to come in and start slapping them around.
They won the search. You have to remember, like,
64 was close.
Like, Thieves looked lost on Miami without smokes and snipers. They looked completely lost. There was like everything offense was just like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. What do you want to do?
Sure.
I don't know. And then 30 seconds were left, and Minnesota just won the map because of it. But like that control and that last Moscow, like we've had Moscow hardpoint since day number 1 of the game. And they weren't playing timings. Their hits were all over the place. And again, there was no presence really whatsoever out of that roaming SMG. Like even when we were watching the launch event stuff of all of the different teams when the game first came out, we were talking largely about like Havoc for Florida. He was all over the place at that point in time. Same thing for Envoy with Chicago. Same thing with the BZ for Atlanta. All of those opening events, we saw what was going to be successful on maps like Moscow. And Minnesota looked like they'd never played the map before. I mean, that was an absolute embarrassment. 250 to 60? I mean, we could have got Mr. Mid-Maps out of the Challengers Elite and they'd put up better than 60 points versus that LA Thieves team. I mean, I don't know. That was an absolute embarrassment. So, I mean, that's what I'm worried about. If this team comes through and it's a team full of veteran experienced players and they're not prepared for maps, I feel like this is going to happen a lot this year, and it's not going to get any better versus Dallas, let's be honest, because they looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point as well, but I mean, it is tough. But as we get over towards that matchup, yeah, they looked incredible, and maybe it wasn't the best opponent, to be able to kind of judge them for as far as, what they're going to be able to do, because Seattle also looks like a squad that, for whatever reason, Alan, they just can't get anything going. And this was the conversation last year, like, help out Octane. Well, Octane's got a lot of new members around him now, so, what is it? What is the issue for as far as the squad? Because they did not look great. I mean, Looney was getting slapped around a little bit in that search and destroy there as well there for us, right? Shotzi giving him the business, and it felt like there was always a time where Dallas was in control. There was never a glimpse of a moment where we're like, all right, this is where Seattle can actually maybe look to change things around and maybe to get control of this game. There wasn't very many moments throughout all of those games that we had for us, because they got a 100-point club going in towards it. That map number 1, and it was 6-2 in towards the search and destroy, and Dallas was looking fantastic. It looked like they really had an understanding of how they wanted to play Miami as well. And then it was a 3-1 on the control. So there was no point in time where we looked at that entire map set, Alan, and it felt like, all right, this is where Surge might be able to excel and actually get some kind of control.
My whole thing with this Dallas team is it wasn't just how they won, it was the fact that every single player participated all the way throughout all 3 of those maps. Now, to be fair, again, Seattle still, I mean, we've heard a lot about this Seattle team and how they're getting smoked in scrims and they're barely putting up a fight versus even some of the bottom teams that people are thinking right now. But this Dallas team, I mean, they needed to come out and have a 3. I mean, the celebration of the rings and them kind of flaunting all that stuff, like they needed to come out and really put a statement down as being like, okay, we absolutely are a top team. It's just one of those things that for a lot of the top teams as we get into it, they're all playing teams that we're going to expect to be at the bottom of the group. So it's a really strange opening couple of days, I would say overall. But for Seattle, I mean, I don't know, man. It just feels like it's just there's so many things that are still they have to worry about. I mean, we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But the 250 to 98, I was like, oh, at least they're gonna get out of the 100-point club because they held the hill, and then nope, just kidding. They get smoked out of the hill, and then all of a sudden Dallas went 250-90. I mean, this man. And I'll say this much: like a lot of it is due to the fact that Hugh was a maniac. I mean,
all right,
he popped, dude. Like, I had Illy after the kickoff. I was like, oh, dude, Illy in a 4v4. Like, first time we've seen him play competitive 4v4. He's looking pretty nice with it. Nah, give Hugh all of that map to work with. He'll make use of it, apparently.
It is really enjoyable. Like, if we could just honestly get like just a POV of Hook in one map, you would just see how much damage he brings, because we don't get to catch all of it on screen all the time, but it feels like he's always doing something impactful. And I mean, there's not too many players that are in the league that are going to be able to fit a lot of these roles. Because remember last year, Hook was playing the supportive role for Dallas, right? He was playing the trophy system. He was running the smoke, I do believe, as well. He was making sure that he was setting his team up for success. And now as we shift towards 4v4, his team is putting him in towards that successful spot. And he had dropped, I think, something along the lines of like just about a 2.0 KD, I think, towards that map number 1, roughly around there, had just dropped numbers. And if that game had been close, I mean, Hook probably could have been on track for as far as like 50 or 60 easily with the way he was playing it, the multi-kills that he was popping out, if the rest of Dallas maybe wasn't performing. So Hook is a menace. I mean, just the term that was brought up from back and towards AW, right? Hook the nuke. It is just something incredible to have him on towards your team and what he's able to do when you give him a bit of breathing room to work with.
1.94 KD on the hard point, 1.75 KD in the search, and a 1.3 in the control, for an average of 1.68 so far, which is leaps and bounds above anybody else. The next closest is Arseny's at 1.4 and Shotzi at 1.4 as well. So shout outs to Breaking Point for those statistics. But I mean, that's unreal. And if he can continue to do stuff like that with the cast that's around him, I don't know, man. I mean, let's be honest. Again, they're playing Seattle, so we can't really look too far into things. But
of course,
the fact of the matter is, if he could do that at any given point in time, even if he doesn't get a 1.94 and it's only a 1.6, heaven forbid, that's still unreal versus some of the top teams without question. But then on the other side, I mean, I don't even know where to start with Seattle. I mean, we talked about it. We were sitting there. We were saying that, you know, it's one of those things. Is this going to be a team that is going to, again, just be Octane fighting for his life? Can Gunless really help? What will the experience of a Looney or a Pristini bring to the mix? Apparently all we got was year 2, same problems.
That's definitely what we're getting. And I think you have to look beyond some of the players now, right? I think something I was talking about, you know, when does it come down on towards Nubsy for as far as, you know, the coach for this roster, you know, making sure that these guys are getting them in shape, right? I mean, that's just the fact that I think we have to start talking about, considering that they have a slow start. It's the beginning of the game. I do understand this first match. They have a lot to prove, but I think we have to start asking these questions based off of seeing a hot 3-0.
You brought up that conversation point. At what point do we step away from blaming the players and look at the coach? I go one step further. I'm looking at the management, because the coach is working with the players, but again, typically speaking in the sports arena, they aren't the ones that are necessarily building the teams. And maybe they're sitting here and saying, Octane, build this team, go ahead, because they don't want to make Octane upset. At a certain point, I think you got to crack down and say, you're done. We're done giving the players and the coaches the ability. Let's get someone out there to scout players that we think are going to be good. Let's start looking at the Challengers elite scene, and let's actually build a team. Build a team, because 2 years now, and again, it's early, but they didn't look good at all. And I don't necessarily want to sit there and blame a coach necessarily, because, you know, I don't know the inner workings, but I think it goes one step above that. I think it's not just necessarily we got to get out of blaming the players and look at the coaches, but I think beyond that, how are we running this team as a full organization? Because if they come out and they only win 4 matches again this next year, I mean, that's just not okay. That's just not okay.
No, it's not. It's really not. And Octane did vocally say maybe he didn't get all the players, you know, that he wanted in and around him for the squad coming in towards the year. But
then
at the end of the day, I mean, this is what you have to work
right?
with. Sure, like, I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. And that's when we start talking about challengers. That's when we start talking about, okay, when is the right time to make a swap? And I feel like if we get similar to, you know, results similar to what we just got there with a hot 3-0, then that's when they might start looking at those options. But it is really hard to say here for us, Alan. But as we move along, Chicago, Paris, I mean, this was This was wild because I've been talking pretty heavily about Paris. I think that this is a squad that could still do some damage in towards the league, but OpTic, they come away with that map one. Things look pretty swift there for us, Alan. But the other two maps, to be fair, they were close up and towards, some
Yeah.
parts of it. It wasn't a complete blowout. Like it wasn't, the same matchup that we just got with Dallas and Seattle, to be fair here for ourselves. OpTic is looking great, but there was definitely opportunities where Paris could have taken a couple of those maps.
The 3-0 start on Search we were both looking at it saying, okay, this is a team that we want to see them be successful in Search and Destroy. They largely were. But then they dropped 6 of the next 7 rounds, and that's not great news. And then again, you look at the 3-2 on the raid control and you say, okay, not bad. But their offense really did not look all that great. Like, that just, like, one of those things that's like, sure, you were able to hold on defensively 2 separate times. The third time, not even close. And let's be honest, it really did kind of feel like that checkmate Search and Destroy. Chicago was just solo ego challing everything. That's where a lot of the plays,
difference.
Huge confidence difference, without question. Paris is one of those squads that I'm not going to come down as harshly on as compared to like a Seattle, because you're dealing with players that, I mean, outside of Classic, who's been around for forever, you've got a new guy in the fire. Was he really ready for the league? I think is still a question that people are asking. I think we have said, yes, he is ready for the league, but you're looking at this squad as a squad that wants to build over time, not necessarily come in at the flat baseline day one and be, okay, they're going to compete.
Exactly.
So I'll give them some room, but not a great showing for the Legion.
No, it wasn't a great showing. And I mean, at the same time, this is what we kind of expected. But I think you just framed it up perfectly. We're waiting to see what this Paris roster can do over time. Very similar to Dallas at the end of the season. Remember, Dallas didn't have a hot start. Like, it took them a little bit to get going. They had to teach Illy. They had to teach Shotzzy come towards the scene for the first time in Call of Duty, how to get them towards that point. So I think that there is a couple of takeaways. Yes, they did end up flopping a little bit in the Search and Destroy, but there was also some great strategies we took away as well, like the preset semtexes and stuns coming in towards those first initial rounds where there was no trophies. Like, they were getting themselves so much control and they were forcing OpTic into a lot of difficult situations. So I think there's some takeaways. I don't think by any means, Alan, do we write this Paris Legion roster off, because you give them a little bit more time with Classic, who for whatever reason seems to still be underrated, came off a pretty good performance, especially in that Search and Destroy today, where it felt like he was opening up with a lot of multi-kills, giving his team some advantages. So you look towards some of these other guys, and if they can get up towards that level as well, I think this Paris squad really will do a lot better than people are expecting.
If this continues, though, and our little silver linings of the encouragement we kind of saw, if it continues and they do not see success, how long do you give this roster before you sit there and say, okay, we gotta shake the tree that is the ownership of Pairs and say, let me build a squad? What point do you sit there and have that conversation? Is it after the first split? Is it after the second? I'm asking.
This might just be the roster they roll with the whole year,
dude,
with the decisions they've made, right? But like, is that a bad thing if we give them a time for a split or two? I mean, I don't think so personally.
I think the first stage you give them a pass. If you start to get into the second and we're still getting smoked, again, they did play Chicago, who were expected to be a top 3, if not top 2, if not best team in the league. So it's hard to sit there and give that evaluation right now. But let's say they come out versus LAG, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and they still get smoked. Okay, well, there is supposed to be a win in this group stage for you through at least one of those teams. I don't know. I think if the second stage doesn't go any better for you, I think you got to start considering it. I don't think it's on the table right now for any part of the first stage. Even if they come dead last in the bracket play, it's on the table. So I don't know.
I mean, even so, I don't think Paris made any roster changes last year, did they? Like,
no,
going through that the entire year. So it probably gives us a pretty good idea of what might end up happening this year as well.
That is totally fair. That is totally fair. And that's why I say you got to start shaking the tree of the ownership right there. Like, you just can't come out and get embarrassed. I think that's what my general reaction to the entirety of what I saw this weekend so far is you just can't get out. You can't be in that much of an embarrassment, because there are so many missed opportunities, I think, for players that are below what we're currently seeing. But then we go over to the Atlanta FaZe playing up against Los Angeles Guerrillas. I mean, resident sleeper on this one, kind of the same situation.
Yeah,
Atlanta just smoked them. To be fair, there's a decent opening initially on P1 and P2 on Crossroads for LIG, and we said, okay, wait a second. It was just a second that you had to wait, because then it was all Atlanta from there out. And the same thing, same conversation point for the Search. They're up 4-2. We're like, okay, we're starting to see some experience come out. Never mind, it would be Atlanta for the next 4, and then the Garrison Control wasn't really even all that close. So I don't even know what to say about these matches, because they've just been too easy.
Too easy. 3-0s, man, across the board. That's just what we've been getting here for ourselves. And it's funny because, yeah, we were talking about, oh, damn, all right, LG, they got themselves, a nice strong start.
Yeah.
They got the flip right away. And then everything just went downhill from there. And it was another moment of kind of coming back to the point that I was talking about, with the matchup yesterday here between the Thieves. It never felt like there was a time where they had control of the map. There was never a time where, like, all right, they're in the driver's seat. They could close this out. They just need to execute. It felt like they were always battling uphill, trying to get themselves to a point where they're actually going to be able to win. And you could never really see that little glimpse of hope. Maybe there was a bit of it here in the Search where you did see some of those moments where they had a couple of nice little adjustments in plays towards, playing on Garrison defense, which is, something that is really hard to break. And we actually did see a lot of offensive rounds go over, right? The first 4 were all offensive. Teams were starting to figure each other out. Felt like LG might be able to kind of move forward with this, and they couldn't. So I am not, again, fully concerned here for LAG, but I think this was a really good test for the side of Atlanta to see, okay, are they really as dominant as everyone was kind of placing them at the beginning of the season? Again, LAG, maybe not the best test, but it is at least a 3-0. They did look dominant. They looked good. This is something that they now have that confidence boost going in toward their next match that they can kind of carry through. So there is a couple of takeaways here overall.
I think the way that Atlanta played Crossroads was just as dominant as I remember seeing them in early scrims. I thought the way that they were able to manipulate Garrison on the offense was very, very strong, because like you mentioned, we don't see a lot of offensive rounds on Garrison. And then the same thing for the Garrison Control. I mean, there was never really a moment where I was sitting there saying, what are you doing, Atlanta? No, they were making all the right plays at all the right times, for sure. Which leads us to just a very weird first couple of days. 3-0s and 100-point clubs. Literally, I mean, I'm going to count the 250 to 102 from Chicago onto Paris a point club, because let's 2 points away from doing it. What in the world? I mean, I just don't understand how, this is happening fully. Now, granted, the teams that are 3-0ing and finding the 100-point clubs are Dallas, Atlanta, and Chicago. But the 250 to 60 from the Los Angeles Thieves onto Minnesota, a lot of the clubbing that we saw, I would not necessarily say were because one team was so dominant, more than I would say the other team just looked like they didn't never play the map before. And I just don't understand it, because we watch a lot of challengers, and I will be the first one to say that Wester, New York Subliners Academy, UT Crew, Built by Gamers, they probably all could have came out this weekend versus those top teams and put up a better showing. Specifically that Western team, because they're scrimming OpTic. Like, that is something right there that's a tell. Like, if Chicago's out there saying we are actually preferring to play up against the top challengers team than some of the CDL squads that are out there, what in the world?
Well, I think the biggest difference in why we're seeing a lot of these 3-0s is these top teams obviously shift over towards 12v4 here for us. A massive difference from 5v5, where it felt like if you went 5 down, you weren't punished as hard as you were in 4v4. And
that's fair.
We're seeing now, as some of these teams, I think, are coming in towards showing us the strong teamwork, the chemistry starting to be built up here for a lot of these top squads. They are punishing these teams they're playing up against when they make a mistake. And that's just kind of going to show you, like, all right, if we make just the tiniest mistake against some of these top squads, we're going to hurt for it, and we have to now catch up because of it. And that was, I think, a big factor from what we saw from Dallas, Atlanta, and OpTic, all the teams you just mentioned here. So I think that's really one of my biggest takeaways from as far as what we got compared to 5v5 to 4v4. Teams still maybe adjusting, slow to really understand how they're be able to take control of the map here again also seems to be a factor, because there were times we were looking at Rocker and they looked lost. Like, they couldn't hold the setup on T3, right? When you give over a full 60, you can't let another full 60 go over. It is simple as that. You need to hold the setup. They were getting broken way too easily, and these are just kind of a lot of the week 1, kind of week 2 problems that we saw coming up at the beginning of the year.
It's the thing that there should not be week 1, week 2 problems when it comes to holding the powerful hard points. Like, it was the same thing with Paris on Raid. They got broke first opportunity for Chicago on P2 and P3. Like, back to back.
Can't happen.
That can't happen. Like, it just can't. Chalk the back 20, which they mostly were, and get a setup. Just set up. At what point do you think that, okay, if you're looking at some of these bottom squads that just got clubbed, you just need to be sitting, go back, watch the film of a team who did the clubbing and just say, we're stealing that. We're just going to do that. I mean, because, I mean, it was no bueno, which brings us to all these teams that are fighting for their first W. You've got LAG and Paris that kick off the day tomorrow. And then, let's be honest, Minnesota's not going to get a win versus Dallas. So you're also looking at Seattle. They're playing up against the London Royal Ravens. At what point, I mean, is this going to be two monkeys fighting in a yard? Because it really feels like these are about to be the scrappiest hard points that we have had a chance to see, because the preparation for all three of those squads did not look good at all.
I mean, a lot of these matches that we're going to see tomorrow are actually going to tell us how far ahead these other top teams are, right? Like if we're getting, a swift 3-0 here for like LAG over Paris, then we know Paris is, extremely far behind, or vice versa. So it's going to give us a good look at where these other top teams actually stand for as far as our ranking system. But this is going to be really scary moments because you're looking at both of these squads and we're hoping to get some competitive matches. I mean, hopefully we don't get 3-0s across the board here, Alan, right?
Dude.
Let's really hope that's not what we end up getting here. But there was a lot of matches where we could say, okay, there could be a 3-0. Like a lot of these squads could fall out flat. Ultra could potentially fall out flat against Florida Mutineers, who were looking good coming in towards that kickoff. Same thing here for New York Subliners, a squad that we think also, could potentially fall flat based off of history with scrims and things like this. So there's a lot of question marks, I think, still for as far as these other squads and just kind of the skill gap between a lot of them for as far as, what they've shown us on stream so far. So tomorrow's going to be a great look at where these other squads that we kind of put maybe in towards the middle of the pack actually do stand here on towards the rankings.
You got to show me something else. You just got to show me something more than what we had from these three teams, because otherwise I think we have to be pretty darn concerned. You got to remember, this is group play that we're seeing. So yeah, for some of these squads, they've already gotten through the toughest opponent, and that's fine to have that as one of your first games. Hopefully it's a learning experience, but for LAG and Paris, I mean, that is a game that both teams are going to be looking at in their group stage and say, we have to win. So with what we just saw, I don't. I'm hoping it was just an off day, maybe a little bit of jitters or something or other, because it was shaky. And then also you got to keep in mind that Seattle's going up against a London team that is playing with Parasite for the first time. So we'll see how kind of things go right there. But I would say overall, looking at not just the teams that got smoked this last week, but the team that actually I think surprised us for the Los Angeles Thieves. They now have this matchup versus the New York Subliners tomorrow. That is the marquee matchup. And I think initially when we were going in, kind of giving our thoughts and predictions, we were sitting there saying this should be a pretty even matchup. We don't really know what to expect from either of these two teams. New York is playing with a put-together roster at the last minute due to, obviously, some problems. But then on the other side, LA Thieves looked really bad versus OpTic Chicago in the kickoff. Now we saw a much improved LAT. So are you starting to second-guess our prediction? Because I think both of us said we had a 3-2 New York in this one.
Yeah, we did actually both have a 3-2. So I wouldn't say I'm second guessing it. I think LA is strong, but we haven't exactly gave New York a chance to shine. And the one thing that I've always taken away from Clayster in particular is when he does actually come down to game day, he does a really good job at prepping the minds in and around him to be prepared for that. And it's like, all right, we're here. We're putting everything that we have in towards this game. We're coming out with a win. I think that's really one of the big traits that Clayster does have here for himself. And the fact that he is around with a lot of members that were not really supposed to be on the roster, but are, I think Clayster's going to deal with it. He's going to get these guys in shape and they are going to be ready to come out against LA. But the biggest question mark that I think I do have for this matchup here for us, Alan, is, will the subs be able to actually match up against what TJ was doing in temp, right? I think that is going to be the factor on whether or not New York do actually win this matchup.
That was the big question for me initially after getting out of that first Garrison hardpoint where Attach was just roaming around the map and causing havoc all over the place. But seeing the Thieves respond to that and then put on that pressure of their own later, especially on the Moscow hardpoint, was encouraging. I'm mostly curious what map set we're going to get, because
that's a good one as well.
I mean, as much as I want to sit there and say that the Thieves should be shooting to play onto Moscow, I don't know if they're going to get that much success against the New York Subliners squad as they did versus this very hindered Minnesota team. I'm going to sit there and say I'm really not I think I put the graphic together. I'm really not that worried for New York. I think it'll be a competitive set. I am starting to second guess my prediction though here again. That's the whole thing is, for me, if the Thieves want to win this series, they need to win one of the search and destroys because they did not look good on the Miami search. So stay away from that and see if you can find success somewhere else, because I feel like this New York team is going to come through, especially with DiamondCon coming off of playing with the New York Subliners Academy team, which at the time was a very strong search and destroy squad. they're going to be a team that's going to be just fine in Surge. So if you're going to beat this New York team, if you're LA, you're going to have a better Surge and Destroy tomorrow, I feel like.
Yeah, that's going to be the big factor for me. But I mean, we start moving along towards what is going to be coming up for us, Alan. And well, there's a reason this matchup's the last one, right? There's an absolute reason this is the last matchup, because there is a lot of banter between both of these squads and who is going to be coming out on top in the group. That's also a factor we have to talk about when we have these two divisions here for ourselves. And this is definitely the battle of one for as far as who is actually going to be able to overcome the other. I will say OpTic, I think, has convinced me a little bit more for as far as being a squad that is a lot more dominant, and it's for the simple fact that they've been flawless all the way through. Even if you're going back to the kickoff, sure, we can't count all those matchups, but man, Alan, they put them in the dirt. LA looks good coming out and towards that matchup right there, sure, but they still look solid. I am favoring OpTic. I know you had taken Atlanta FaZe in this one,
more
but
dominant, dude. No, they're not a lot more dominant than what we saw from Atlanta. I mean,
I disagree.
Okay. The thing about it is, yeah, LAG looked maybe a touch better than Paris did on the hard point, but Atlanta looked much better on the control. I mean, they took offenses on the Garrison control and they did it cleanly. To say that Chicago was much more dominant? Come on.
No, I think that they will be. And when we get to that matchup in OpTic 3-1 Atlanta FaZe, I think that's when you're going to be like, all right, Visions, you were right. I take it back.
Not saying
but we'll have to wait to get there. We'll have to wait to get there, of course. But I think the reasoning behind it is because whenever we're doing listen-ins with these guys, not only are they having a good time on screen when we're seeing in between the matches, but when they're actually in game, their comms are one of the cleanest, I will say, that we've actually gotten to listen into so far in towards the matchups. And that alone brings you a lot of confidence for as far as anyone that's a fan of OpTic Gaming, because if the comms are on point and Dashy's doing things like he was today, and you just have everyone else that can also do those exact same things, I think that this roster still looks more solid. And Atlanta FaZe was just too overhyped, I think, coming in towards this season here for it. So by far, everyone, even including myself, said this Atlanta FaZe is going to roll through everyone. Well, that's not the case as much anymore. Things are 4v4. We got Scumpy back on towards what has been, the king of 4v4 in a lot of ways. And that's why I'm convinced that they're going to take them down when we get towards that matchup.
I could not sit here and allow you to spew that Chicago is a lot more dominant after watching them hit the bottom feeders like that.
I think I just did, Alan.
You sure did. Hey, it's viewer question time. We're actually staying pretty darn on par with where we want to be. And again, at the end of the show, coming up next there, we are going to be doing a giveaway, exclamation point giveaway. We'll get you a link to the tweet from the Defuse, Twitter and social media post, as we will be giving away the OpTic Chicago CDL team pack. So if you have not already followed along with that and retweeted that tweet, make sure you do that, because as soon as we start getting through some viewer questions here, we will be giving away that pack here live on the air. I'm not even sure how we're gonna do that. I guess we just got to go through who retweeted and just pick one and see if they're following both you and I and the show. And
yeah,
that's probably how we're gonna have to do that, I guess.
I guess that's exactly how we're gonna have to do that one, Alan, and see how it kind of comes together here for us and pick out a winner. So yeah, if you guys haven't done that, make sure you guys go do that right now. But yeah, I don't see how else we'll be able to kind of do it.
I've never done it. I've never done like a giveaway like this. I usually always use that Gleam post because it just selects it for you, and I don't feel like pressure to like pick somebody. I think what I'm gonna do is just like pull up like the retweets and just kind of go like up and down with my mouse, and then when you tell me to stop, I'm gonna click on somebody or something, and we'll just kind of figure out how we go. That sounds pretty all right. Let's go ahead and do some questions here. Do you think all four players from Western will get picked up together as a pack for the CDL next year, or only one or two players would get picked up? I have to feel like they would prefer to be picked up as a 4. Now, the question is, if we come to next year and there are expansion teams and there's not an expansion team that sits there and says, we want to pick all 4 of you up, will they forfeit spots in the CDL because they want to stick together as a 4? I don't think so. I think it would have to be a conversation point for whoever wants to own up into the 2022 year. They would have to approach them pretty early on for them to try to hold out as a full 4, at least in my mind.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It also depends if Western stay as dominant as they are as well,
That's
right?
fair.
Like, I mean, we have seen teams in the past that have looked fantastic, and Western does look fantastic, right? They've been able to show their dominance. They've won 4 to 5 cups. They've already flawless going towards the elite league. They have a lot of ice, but hey, maybe we're getting towards these next couple of splits, and things maybe don't go as well for Western, and they
Right.
start falling down a bit. So I think it is really dependent on whether or not they continue to show their pure dominance throughout the rest of the season. But I think ideally the squad would like to be picked up as 4. I mean, Paul X already turning down a 2-week contract to
Yep.
try out with the CDL team should show like, all right, they are serious. They want to get onto an expansion team together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the desire, I think, overall. But I think the big key is they have to be consistent all the way through the entirety of the year. And let's be honest, yeah, I don't even know outside of a couple of the teams if there has ever been a full squad to do very well without having making a single change. So that is, I think, a big point of contact for sure. Let's see here. Do you expect all the elite teams to play well tomorrow? Are all the elite teams playing in the home series cup? I guess is my first question, because I don't know at what point do you chalk the tournament to prepare for your matchup. I think that's the real question. I actually have no clue how many of the elite teams are choosing to play or not play, I think more importantly, in the cups throughout these 3 weeks where the elite season is going on.
And if they are, let's say they are, which I would assume they
It's
probably want to get
practice
as
one way or
much
the other,
practice,
right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to get as much practice as they can, but there's also something that kind of floats in the back of your mind, knowing that, okay, this isn't as important as it was just a couple of weeks ago, right? We got in
Absolutely.
towards the Elite League. That's where our focus is. And they're going to be prepping a lot more for all the teams that they're actually commonly playing up against from week to week to week. So I think there's going to be a lot of squads that haven't been performing well that probably will be taking this very serious, because this is obviously a chance to be able to prove themselves, get good practice, see if they have what it takes to also go through those longer days, which is, something that is also not really talked about for as far as playing, 6, 7, 8 hours and being able to keep that consistent play up. It's not easy to do. So it'll be a true test for a lot of them, but I expect most of them to certainly be playing in it.
Okay, this is a 2-for-1 here, because Melodius asks, would you drop one of Seattle subs for a top AM sub? And then the other question is from Shafi, if Surge loses to London, is it time for a change? I mean,
I don't think it's time for a change.
It's not time for a change, but if you lose to London, you better figure it out in the next week, because you can't go a 4-win season again. You just can't do it.
No. I mean, it's like the organization, just like think about that too, right? Like this is your chance to like revamp the entire perspective of how people look at your team, and having the slow start is not how you're building fans.
It was a 5-win season. My bad.
5 wins.
5-19.
God damn you, Alan.
5-19.
We got 5. All right.
20% of the time they win.
It's still a problem. I mean, it's obviously still I mean, just look what it does like as a fan base. Like when you're a fan base looking to try and
not good
see what team you want to support, it's pretty hard to be a Seattle fan, man. Like I really do feel for those guys. It's hard to cheer for a team that just never wins. I mean, it's almost like my hat, like feels bad, Alan. It feels bad, man.
Okay, let's see this one. Do you guys believe that Parasite will hold off the starting spot even when Trey gets back? He's got to perform for it to even be a consideration, because this is literally the definition of he's temporarily filling in. So he's going to have to perform. He's going to have to play really, really well. And then there's the conversation. At the time right now, I don't think that's the conversation. It's Parasite's filling in. When Zero comes back, he's starting.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the case, right? I mean, unless London just win, then that's the only time where you're like, all right, let's maybe see what happens. But I think it's obvious they want Trey on this squad. They just simply can't have him. So they're forced to then add in a sub.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is maybe there's a situation where if London loses, but Parasite plays well, that, okay, maybe we need to think about getting a roster move of our own, right? Because I still am not confident in that roster through and through. Like outside of Dylan, I still don't think that roster is any good, but we'll see how things unfold. Last year when online, I felt like any of the top 8 teams in their day could win a homestand. Do you think this year we will start to see just a handful of teams dominate the top? Asked Tom. I think we're going to get a very similar situation as we had last year at the beginning, as we will at the beginning of this year. You're going to have 3 teams that are going to dominate. And then as we get longer into the season, you'll start to see teams like Florida or Toronto or that other team that's kind of in the mix that we just don't really think strongly of right now, that they improve, they get better, and it gets them to a point where they'll eventually win. And LA Thieves maybe is in one of those situations where maybe they're contesting top 6. Or again, you got to keep in mind that these home stands, you don't win a home stand, but you win the stages. So I'm kind of thinking about those as the stages overall. I don't think Thieves are in a position where they're going to beat any of the top 3 teams in the opening stage. Maybe not in the second, but by the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, I think it's definitely possible. So I think we're going to be in that situation where largely the first opening stages will be dominated by those top 3 squads. But I think by the end of the year, stage 4, stage 5, I think you could probably see 6 teams that'll be consistent.
I agree with that. I think Challenges is a great example of what happens as we go through each and every cup, right? Like Wester looked great, barely dropping a map as we got towards, some of the day 2s. And then they start to, these other squads start to catch up with them. It's the same thing as this first week goes by, like all these CDL teams go back where they review, they figure out what the top teams are doing, they try to replicate that, and they try to turn that in towards their own game style. So it just takes a little bit of time to get to the point where you're going to be able to figure out what they're doing and how to actually counter it and how to shut it down. So I think we'll get towards a good 6 teams that will be solid for as far as squads that could take it at any given point.
A lot of people asking questions about who do you think are going to win the home series tomorrow for the elite side of things. We do spend Wednesday talking largely about the elite league, but let's just say, I mean, this is kind of who's your favorite elite team right now is kind of the question. I still think after we talked Wednesday, New York Subliners Academy, Wester top 2 without question in North America. UT Cruise in the mix. I would love to see Built by Gamers that they are playing. I'd love to see them come out strong. And then for reasons that I know the social media world will appreciate on Wednesday. But then over in Europe, I think it's stuff for grabs again. I think you need to see a good performance from House Tarth, from Singularity to kind of build some more faith into them, because they did not have a great start to their opening in their elite league in Europe overall.
Yeah, man, it's really weird. I mean, Orglis looking great.
Yeah.
And then House Tarth and Singularity are just the big, they should be in a different spot than they are. It's kind of, I mean, the Built by Gamers, right? Like you feel like they should be higher up than they really are. Obtained as well. I mean, everything's flip-flopped. All the squads that are currently in towards the top 3 are all squads that were finishing from 8 to 5. And it's all the squads that are, below that were obviously on top. So it's just a massive flip-flop and rearrange for as far as what we currently have within the EU scene. And I mean, I still feel like any one of those squads really could come through and end up closing out the entire thing for the first stage.
All right, let's do giveaway, shall we? All right, how are we gonna do this? Let's see here. And again, if you are watching here on Twitch, remember that we do upload these almost immediately to all the major podcast providers and also to YouTube. So if you missed any of the show, you can find them on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast, Google Podcasts, things of that nature, as well as on YouTube. So make sure you're keeping an eye on all of that. And if you're listening live to all of that, make sure that you also know that we do go live after the CDL on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. All right. I'm scrolling. I'm just going to have you tell me when to stop. And then I'm going to do it with my mouse again. I'm going to hover over somebody and then you're going to tell me when to stop again. All right.
Do I got to do a drum roll again, Alan?
Go for it. You're the one who's got to tell me how to stop though, because otherwise I'm just going to keep doing this.
I will. All right. 3, 2, 1, stop.
Okay. Now same thing with my mouse for who's on this little part of it. Go ahead. Do it again.
All right. 3, 2, 1, stop.
The winner is Alt FPS, ALRT_FPS. I'm going to send you his thing. Also make sure he's also following you. Make sure that we're good here. He is following the Defuse. He retweeted, so we'd love to see that. And then I'll go over to my account and see if he's also following. Yes, he is. He's following me as well. Is he following
me as well?
All
Alan.
right.
He's good to go. He's good to go.
RTFPS. He has won the giveaway. Congratulations to him.
Congrats.
And don't look too far, because we got to do another giveaway. We got to start it almost immediately because we got another pack to give away. We got all 12. The question is, which pack do we give away next?
This is the question. I picked last time, Alan, so now this one's on you.
I'm going to choose the New York Subliners because they're the marquee match tomorrow.
Nice.
I want it, and they only played once, so we're gonna do New York Subliners giveaway. That'll start tomorrow. I don't know. What do you prefer? Did you prefer us doing the just retweets and likes, or do you want to do the Gleam one again? What do you think we should do for that?
Yeah, we just do the retweets and likes. I think that's fair.
Sounds good.
It's a little bit easier for the people as well. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, one less step. Let's do it.
We'll do that again. So if you've already followed and retweeted off of this first giveaway, you've got a really easy bar of entry for the next one. All you gotta do is retweet again. So we'll be back on Sunday. We'll choose the winner of the subliners, and of course, beyond that, we will be recapping all of the action that occurs over day 3 and day 4. Wouldn't you know it, Austin? We hit 45 minutes almost on the nose.
Bang. I like that. And we took a couple extra questions. I mean, we could have cut it early. So you know what? That's
proud of us.
We take those.
Okay, so the big meme right now is all the CDL casters are trying to get a high five going. We need to try to high five as well and see if we can upstage the other casting duos. Are you ready for that?
Wait, I'm on the right. I'm trying to figure out which way.
Other way.
Oh no. Other way, left. I'm going left.
Go. Okay,
all
okay. All right, you ready?
Ready? We can do a 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Kabang! Oh, we didn't even come close. We'll try to figure that out. Everyone's figuring it out, so we'll try to figure it out. We'll catch you guys on Sunday for the next episode of the Defuse. Till that point, though, do not let your fuse fizzle out. So long.